Hello, Texans, and here we go, Johnny. Nick Caserio has been named the Texans' new general manager, of course, a couple of decades with the New England Patriots, and Cal McNair wanted him before. Now he gets him. He will run the football side of the organization, and we're all looking forward to seeing the results, of course. And I get it. There's some reaction about, wait a minute, you're dipping back into that Patriots pool. Well, I think you got to look at the individual involved here much more than the organization he was involved with. I know you can't discount that, but he's so highly regarded, so smart. I liken him to sort of a coach's GM, player's GM. He's a real hands-on, headset on kind of guy, literally. So I know there's a lot of reaction around the country and the fans and everybody else. Let's dig in here. Your thoughts?
I think what's telling, Mark, is when you see throughout the league almost universal thumbs up for Nick Caserio individually. Mm-hmm. And I think, that's the hard part, is separating the individual Nick Caserio from New England Patriot Nick Caserio. That's going to be the hard part for everybody involved, including Nick. He's going to be fighting perception issues in some sense, and I hope that people will just look at Nick Caserio for what he is, and that's a guy that loves the game. I'll tell you this, Mark. I've gone, you know this because I send you my expense report each and every March. I go to a number of pro days in and around the area, and I would like to go to more, but I go to pro days a lot, and I've been at A&M's pro day a number of times, and invariably the second half of pro day is Nick Caserio channeling his inner quarterback days back at John Carroll University, mm-hmm. and throwing an entire draft workout to the running backs and the wide receiver prospects. Or if they're defensive backs, throwing them deep routes where they've got to turn and flip their hips and go get it. So I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. I was down there, and he was doing the workout, and that isn't the only thing he'll do. He'll lead the linebacker workout. He'll lead the defensive line workout. Like, I've seen him lead the workout. And a pro day is kind of interesting because it kind of gives you an idea and a look into the hierarchy of how things go. And if there are coaches there, position coaches there, they run those drills. If they're not, then the scouts run those drills. But even if there are positional coaches there to run the drill, Nick Caserio was going to run those drills. Now, he may have done it at other places other than A&M, but that was the one I went to, and I saw it. Well, it was either last year or the year before. They did a portion of the drill, and he ran it. And I look over there, and he's, like, moving bags around. The little bags you do, the little feet, right. You go chop your feet over them, all that kind of stuff. Like you see at the combine, the linebackers do. He's got a bag, and he's dragging it, and he's got a phone up to his ear. And he walks over, and he drags over another bag, and he's got his phone up to his ear. He's dragging over another bag. He drags all the bags, and he's kind of kicking them because he's holding the phone. He's trying to kick him to get him straight. And eventually he hangs up, puts the phone back in his pocket. Later the next day, I saw that the Patriots had made a deal. And somebody from New England, I don't know if it's Ben Volen or whomever, had said, I guess Caserio must have made this deal because he was at A&M Pro Day. And I'm like, holy cow. He was in the middle of moving bags around, just having done a wide receiver workout. Now he's about to work with the linebackers, and he's doing a deal on the phone. And I was like, oh my gosh. That blew me away because I can't do two things at once. And this guy's conducting a pro day workout. He's making a deal on the phone. And at the same time, he's also making mental notes on these prospects that he's seeing at the same time. And I was blown away by that. And I wouldn't have put that together until I saw why. I mean, he could have easily been on the phone with his family, with his wife, with somebody, with Belichick, who knows. But come to find out, that he was working the phones that day to try and get a deal done. And I was like, that's crazy. I'm sitting there watching him get this drill together. And then it made me think, why is he setting up that drill? And it just goes, that was the final thing I thought about was, you set up that drill and do it on your own because you love doing it.
Right.
You love doing that kind of thing.
Sure.
And that's the one thing that we've heard a lot about Nick Caserio. And I would see at those pro days how much he loved throwing that ball to those guys, how much he loved teaching those receivers, this is the route. And he would coach up those receivers. If those receivers didn't make the right route, he wouldn't throw it. He would have them go back in the line and would teach them the right way to run the route and then throw them the football. And that you do when you love what you do and you love the game of football. And so hopefully that's the thing that we see from Nick Caserio, now the new Houston Texans general manager, and not former Patriots, leave that behind. This is the guy, Nick Caserio, and how much he loves ball and how much that filters through this organization.
Well, he's got to figure out what to do with this roster, and we all know about cap space, and everybody's read the reports on that. And, of course, they don't have a first or second-round pick, but they do have a lot of picks to work with once you get to round 3, and they've got to make the right decisions with those picks, obviously, more often than not. But I like some of the things you said here. Let's get to know him. I mean, and I can't wait to sit down with him, but he's from Ohio, and he went to John Carroll and played quarterback there, and Josh McDaniels was a receiver there, right? And London Fletcher also went to John Carroll. All right, so it's a smaller school, obviously, but it's got a little football pedigree to it. And he started his career as a coach, and he coached at Saginaw Valley. He was at Central Michigan, Johnny, as a grad assistant, which I like this. I like guys who have Chippewa blood, so he's got some DNA from the Chips from an 0-1 season then. And then he goes to New England, and he's there ever since. I mean, he's been there almost 2 decades, so he's got a lot of Patriots in him, no doubt about it. But it's not a bad place to be, not a bad place to learn a lot of different things. But I really think he's going to come in here as his own man. And everything that people from New England are telling us is that, look, they get it. You work for the Patriots. Bill Belichick's in charge. Clearly personality-wise, O'Brien could not have been more different from Bill Belichick in terms of outward personality. And look, you did win some games here, and let's just not talk about that kind of past. But Caserio comes in here as his own guy. And look, he wants this gig, obviously. He gets this gig. He knows what the deal is here. He's watched from the outside looking in. He's got some good intel on what's gone on here, and he takes it from here. But, Johnny, wearing the headset, that kind of thing, I don't see him as the kind of GM to be in the box with Cal. He's going to be in the other box, the press box, with a headset on, or down on the sideline or something. Like, he wants to get into the mix. Not that he's an interloper or whatever. Not that he's a micromanager, but he wants to be involved. Like you said, he loves football. So I kind of like this. We're all eager to see who the coach is going to be, but I think this is a very interesting start in the offseason development of the 2021 Texans.
No doubt. I think the one thing that Nick will have to figure out for himself, I think there are 2 things that work here, Mark. But number 1 is figuring out what does it take to be the GM on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And I think that figuring that out, and in talking to a few guys that were GMs across the board, I had a conversation with a former GM guy who was in the AFC South for a while, and talking about being a GM, and his eyes just grew big, and it was like, you just don't realize once you step into that seat how much that goes with it. Mm-hmm. The other side of it is, the one thing we know about New England is that guys do a lot of different things. And I think that is, in my way of saying it, that's to squeeze as much orange juice out of the orange as possible. And I think with Nick, you have a very smart guy. And if you look at his resume, it's kind of like, wait a second, you start in the coaching realm, and then it goes scouting, then it goes back to coaching, and then it goes to scouting again, and you're like, well, wait, holy cow, I don't know if I can follow that. The point being, if you've got a smart guy in some way, shape, or form, then you rock and roll with it. And what ends up happening, I think, for a lot of guys that go into personnel is they but they're concerned about the personnel side. Like, how does this guy look? What does he look like at a pro day? What kind of traits are going to be there? And I think what happens is sometimes you don't always do this, but I think sometimes you move a little bit further away from the X's and O's of things. Mm-hmm. I think whether that will be something that's part of his repertoire going forward is going to be based on who's the head coach, how familiar is he with the offense. In New England, they've been running the same thing for years. So they knew what to look for. They knew the cues and all that kind of stuff. But new head coach that comes in may look at things differently. They may have some different things. And on top of that, Nick's got a lot to handle as the GM. So that may not be something that he wants to do. He may have to try and kind of figure it out. Like, all right, I do feel like on Sunday I can be an asset. And I think Nick's going to be able to figure that out fairly quickly. But that was just something in New England. There was an expectation there that if you could do a lot of things, they were going to ask you to do a lot of things if you could do them. And if you didn't, then more than likely you weren't staying there too long. Because they didn't have the use for guys that weren't multi-talented in a number of different ways. It just so happened that he could be good with a headset on just as much as he could be making a draft deal during a pro day.
Well, you go through all the forensics of this thing and the Texans GM saga in the last few years since the departure of Rick Smith when he left on the leave of absence following the 2017 season. And Caserio, I mean, you couldn't touch him then because he was protected, right? And, Brian Gaine ends up getting the gig. And then Caserio again when we had the, I don't know what to call it, flirtation or the, inquiry into his services. But obviously that was a no-no because of whatever his contract language was at the time. And now you can't prevent him from leaving because he's going to get the top flight job in the organization in football operations. So this is very cool to see. But it's, this is somebody who they've been interested in for a long time. And I think a lot of teams have. But I brought this side of it up to point out and back up your point that Belichick knows this, and I think that you have to continue to empower your people. And he's been very empowered to do a lot of different things in that organization. Now, I know it's different when you're sitting in the big seat as opposed to, you can be the number 2 guy and do everything. But when you're the number 1 person, it's a lot different. And now he's the number 1 person. But we'll see how he handles it. He's got a lot of experience. He's had a lot of time to look around and see how things are. And let's just see what he does with it. And we're all excited to meet him. Final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think that's I always, me, I always like meeting guys that talk ball and like ball and can explain it, because there's a lot of stuff we're not in that room for. So it's always good to have somebody say, hey, here's what we were trying to do. Oh, okay, cool. That just the understanding, I think, of the game and the understanding of putting a roster together. I'd be interested to pick his brain on things like that. So from that perspective, I think the first thing we do is we wish him luck that, hopefully he comes in here and can turn the Texans into the winner that New England was to get all the way to the championship, but do it his way and do it our way and not anybody else's way. And I think if we're able to do that, then we'll see where we are, and hopefully we're moving on in the right direction.
Well, we have plenty more coverage coming your way in the days to come, right wherever you're watching this right now. Go Texans.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to know when we post new content.